Welcome, everyone. My name is Sierra Sanchez, webinar producer with CGLR. Connect with the campaign for grade level reading on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR. On Twitter, follow the account at Reading by Third. And on LinkedIn, subscribe to us at Campaign for GLR. Please use the hashtag Learning Tuesdays and tag us to tweet anything you learn from today's webinar, and we'll be sure to retweet. We encourage you to share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. And before we begin, I have just a few housekeeping details. First, we would love for you to introduce yourself. So please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to share your name, city or state, and your organization. Be sure when responding to select both panelists and attendees so that we all know who is here. The webinar is being recorded and live streamed on Facebook. A link to the recording, as well as any resources, slides, and bios shared during the conversation, will be sent in a follow-up email to all who registered. Additionally, we'll be posting a brief on-screen evaluation during closing and highly encourage you to respond. This helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement. I also wanted to flag for all of you that we will be offering closed captions during this webinar. If you'd like to turn them on, just go to the dock that's at the bottom of your Zoom screen and you'll have the option to turn them on or off. And before we start, I wanted to call your attention to our upcoming webinars. Next week on October 24th, we have an exciting webinar at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on building parent power, fostering a movement of informed learning agents. And on October 31st, we have an exciting session on making money matter. And on November 7th, we hope you will start off the month with us on a session on early grade retention, a conversation about the potential benefits and risks. More information and registration links will be posted in the chat box now, and we hope you'll schedule them in and join us. And joining you now is Becky Miles-Polka, Senior Consultant with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Sierra. We are so excited that you are all here today. We had over 1,600 people register for this GLR Learning Tuesdays webinar, so it shows just how important this topic is to each of you. You know, good attendance has been foundational to the Campaign for Grade Level Reading since our launch over a decade ago. And while many communities were making gains, the pandemic upended this. And now we have seen alarming increases in chronic absence, particularly in our youngest learners. One strategy is to reestablish routines of daily attendance among all students, but especially our youngest learners, as we continue through this new school year. Today, we will hear how schools and community partners can work together with families to overcome attendance barriers, including health-related concerns, and make attendance a top priority for families and students. As we go throughout the day today, I will be posting links in the chat. You can feel free to grab those, but all of the resources I post will be going out later in the week with our follow-up materials, along with the slides and recordings. So don't worry, you'll be getting all of those. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Hetty Chang, longtime partner and good friend. She is the director, executive director and president of Attendance Works. Her full bio will be posted along with our entire panel shortly. Hetty, welcome and thank you for everything that you do, but especially for being here today.
Thank you so much. It is truly my honor and my privilege, especially when we're going to have such an amazing set of panelists who can give us concrete ideas about what we can do to make a difference. Let's go to the next slide, because I would like to just lay a little bit of context for what we're seeing right now and the incredibly urgent need, like never before, to support attendance every day, starting with our youngest students. So let's go to the next slide. Jess quick level the playing field, we're talking about chronic absence that's missing so much school that a child is academically at risk. That's defined as missing 10% of school. So excused, unexcused, suspensions, all of that counts. And when I say 10% of school, that's 2 days in the first month, 4 days in the second month, 6 days in the third month. We want to be able to notice when kids are falling off track for good attendance, so we can address the challenges and issues that are facing them, so that we can get them on track before the learning, the consequences of not being in school have become even greater. And this is really different from truancy, which only looks at unexcused absences, or average daily attendance, which is typically how many kids show up to school each day. If you go to the next slide, what we know is that chronic absence is a leading indicator and a cause of educational inequity. And what do I mean by that? When kids are chronically absent, it often is a reflection of challenges maybe in the community, lack of access to health care, unreliable transportation, unstable housing, as well as in schools, the lack of engagement of families, poor disciplinary strategies that are alienating kids and families and pushing them out, bullying in schools. And those challenges, whether they're outside or in school, are actually affecting kids' learning while they're in school, and then causing them to miss additional time in the classroom, which then even further exacerbates the educational inequities. So this is why we care. Next slide. And what we also know is that particularly for our youngest learners, this matters a ton. If kids are chronically absent in preschool and kindergarten, they are more likely to be chronically absent in later grades, less likely to read and count proficiently by the end of third grade. Chronic early absence is actually associated with declines in educational engagement, social emotional development, even executive functioning. And economically challenged students are especially affected, as they typically have less access to the resources that can help, that can allow them to make up for these lost opportunities to learn and engage. We also know, because we are still coming out of a very challenging situation, we're still, we've got COVID still a bit in the mist, but this has been a traumatic 3 years, and a regular routine of attendance helps young children and their families become less anxious about school, connect to peers as well as teachers, access resources, and engage in learning. So attendance every day is critical to laying that foundation for early school success. Next slide. And we have an unprecedented crisis. We just took a look at national data, and if Becky, you can put in the chat a link to our blog that we just released last week. We know that chronic absence has nearly doubled to almost 30% of kids. It's now over about 14.7 million kids. These increases are occurring in tandem with significant drops in achievement. If you look at what happens, looking at the NAEP scores, for example, and the early data from 22-23 indicate rates remain high. And we know that rates are especially high in early elementary and high school. Next slide. Now, the other thing we found, so this is so troubling, but if you look at the percentage of schools who now experience really high levels of absenteeism, it has grown astronomically. So 43%, if you look at the far right end of that, of schools now have 30% or more of their kids chronically absent. That's one out of three. 2/3 have 20% or more. And the growth has been especially high among elementary schools. We now have a majority of elementary schools with high and extreme levels of chronic absence. That is not something we saw before the pandemic. And if you just think about it, in the 21-22 school year, that's 20,000 almost elementary schools throughout the country having 1 out of 3 kids chronically absent. The impact that has on both teaching and learning is significant, especially as schools and teachers struggle to help kids, many of whom had different, they're coming in with even wider variations in their preparation for learning as they come into schools this year. So, and this means once you have this high levels of chronic absence, it can't be something you think you're going to resolve just by having one person address the issue, or because as you get back to school, things are going to turn back to normal. This requires intentional engagement, intentional planning throughout the year, and using data to inform our actions. Next slide. And we know that this work has to start in kindergarten, because we're seeing from the few states, not all states have this, and if you're in a state that doesn't produce chronic absence by grade level, you should be advocating for this because the data is informative. But we know chronic absence levels can start really high in kindergarten. And if we can't get our kindergartners on track, it's going to be a lot harder by the time they get to middle and high school. Next slide. This means we have to redouble our investments in positive conditions for learning, making sure that children and families feel physically and emotionally healthy and safe, feel that sense of belonging, connection, support. When families feel engaged, they take their young kids to school. When kids feel engaged, they beg their parents to go to school. This is about academic challenge and engagement, and making sure we're investing in the adults and students and the families in our schools so that they can all engage in the relationship building that is so crucial to all of these positive conditions for learning. And when we see these high levels of chronic absence, is a sign that these positive conditions for learning have been badly eroded. And we know that this is still a huge critical, important task before us to reestablish these positive conditions for learning, because all other aspects of a recovery will not work unless our kids and families are there to benefit from whatever we're trying to put in place. Next slide. And this is about an all hands on deck approach to ensuring a tiered approach that starts with those positive conditions of learning, then adds on tier 1, universal prevention, tier 2 and tier 3 for the kids for whom those other tiers aren't sufficient. Next slide. We are announcing, I'm so pleased to announce, and much kudos to the Attendance Works team for putting this together and getting this out. We just released it this year. It's an updated Early Matters Toolkit, and it offers strategies for schools and districts that will work, talking about reaching out before kindergarten, starting with a warm welcome and engagement, partnering with families all year long, offering supports to reduce health-related absences, establishing data-informed teams, and then communities coming and together to support this work by enlisting community partners who can cultivate that attendance culture, as well as provide resources to address the barriers that kids and families face. We cannot leave it just for schools alone to address. This requires all of us helping, and then organizing those attendance campaigns that can reach families with young children. So you can go to this toolkit if you want more resources, but I'd advise you do that after our webinar, because we are in for a treat with some amazing practitioners talking about what they're doing in their communities that you can learn from and think about what's possible in your own communities. Next slide. So we have an amazing set of practitioners, as I said. I want to start with we're going to bring Anel Garza. She's a principal from Marshalltown, Iowa, and she will be giving that a critical perspective as a site leader. We will have Ben Barlow, because Albuquerque Public Schools has really been investing and putting in place systems to support this work across all of their schools. And then we'll have Lysandra Agosto. She is with the Children's Aid in New York City, and Lysandra, actually, if we go to the next slide, is being accompanied by other members of her team. They take the team approach seriously. Sandra Romero, who's their community school coordinator, as well as Monica Rossi, who's their health coordinator. And then last but not least, we're going to have a chance to hear from Branda Stockman, who is with the National League of Cities, talking about how we can bring cities into the mix. All right, with that, let's move into the conversation. Next slide, please. So our first question is asking, how are you ensuring that families experience, and know the benefits of showing up to school, especially because we know sometimes families don't hear and see how important this is for our youngest learners. Lysandra, will you start us off?
Thank you, Heidi. First, I'd just like to say thank you for having me on this panel, speaking on a subject matter that I'm really passionate about. So some ways that we've ensured families experience and see the benefits of showing up to school regularly is, well, in the early childhood division at Children's Aid, we started an attendance campaign, #SchoolEveryday, #Attendance Matters, to combat chronic absenteeism and encourage our families to bring the students to school every day. Each year during orientation and periodically throughout the school year, we inform and remind families what is the definition of chronic absenteeism and its impact. We define it as missing as little as just 2 days per month for any reason can equate to missing 10% of an academic school year. That's chronic absenteeism. We share how regularly attending school is essential to students gaining the skills they need to succeed and thrive, both academically and in life. We share what the potential impact chronic absenteeism has on students' academic success, according to research and studies. And a lot of the research and studies that we connect our families to explore more on comes from attendance works. Thanks, Heidi. We've created a flyer with a few points on why attendance matters, suggestions on things families can do during the school year to maintain that healthy home and school relationship, and some ideas to help families build a positive routine to support that regular attendance. We have incentives and rewards for the students and families that make it to #SchoolEveryday. And we also acknowledge and reward families who have made strides to improve the students' attendance. In the past, we've given out trophies, certificates, or small gifts. When the division is gifted trips, concert tickets, activities, or goodies from private donors, we'd reward the students and families, or a classroom, or the whole site with the highest attendance or most improved attendance. Lastly, we've created some videos. One is of some of our students sharing why they love coming to school, and another is of a parent sharing why school every day is important to her. Let's take a look.
School is always fun and I get to go to centros. Yo estudio mucho, voy a ver mis amigas, porque yo aprendo. Ahí también llegan los números. And I get to go downstairs. Y también animales, y también tomar números. And we get to eat snacks. I like coming to school because we go to the park and have fun there. I like to go to the park and downstairs, and I like to go to centers, and I like to hang out with my friends.
Para mí es importante porque quizás ahora es pequeña y no es como una costumbre, pero es una rutina que después se va a volver una costumbre. Levantarse temprano, ella se levanta sola, ella siempre dice quiero ir con mis Kim y pues es lo que me motiva más porque ella viene emocionada a la escuela.
Lysandra, before we shift, why videos?
Well, we do the videos because it shows from the perspective of the students that we actually serve and the families, why it's important to them, what do they enjoy about it. So it's just like a real life example.
Yeah, you know, I think about the fact that in so many places, families just drop kids off at the front of the school building. They don't go in, they don't see what's in the classroom. And we know from research that if families know what kids are benefiting from every day, they're more likely to show up. So these videos are so powerful. And I think Lysandra is,
Yes.
I'll shift over. Sandra, can you tell us more about what you guys do from a community schools perspective?
Yeah, so we definitely do lots.
Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we do definitely do lots of things. But one of the things we definitely tend to do is nurture our families and create a welcoming environment. If you can move on to the next slide. We do a welcoming environment. We have morning greetings. So what is morning greetings is we have our success mentors outside in our schoolyard greeting the students every day with music. We celebrate great attendance during our parent-teacher conference. So during parent-teacher conference, what we tend to do is have conversations regarding attendance, and we celebrate the parents themselves. We have rallies once a month around attendance, and we have teachers participating in these rallies. We have celebrate, this is a big one, celebrating students' birthdays. So we do one of the things we've seen is like sometimes the parents want to keep the students on their birthdays because, you know, it's a special date, but what we tend to do at our school is that we shout them out, they get crowns, their pictures taken. So we know that the parent is expecting that, so they don't tend to keep them from school. And then also what we try to do is have these conversations around academic growth and attendance. So when we're seeing that the student is succeeding, we have these conversations with parents around, you know, letting them know how important it is for them to come to school, and then because they're also learning in school, right? And then we celebrate parents during our attendance cafe. So during our attendance cafe, we have this once a month. We have activities, event for parents, and then we shout out parents who've done amazing with the growth around attendance. One of the biggest things we also have tended to do is focus a lot on the parents because they're the ones that bring the kids to the school. So it's also like picking up on that part, not only celebrating the kids, but also celebrating the parents.
Thank you so much. And now I'd like to ask Anel Garza to join us as a principal. And let's turn off the slides for a second. So what do you do in your school to be able to really make sure that families understand the benefits, especially with young little ones, of showing up to school every day?
Yes, thank you, Haiti. Many of the strategies that you shared in the slide of, you know, the Early Matters Toolkit is something we implement, but specifically the areas we focus on is having that relationship built with the families right away. So we have a kinder greet and meet before school even starts. That's where our parents or families, caregivers meet with our individual teachers, and they get a lot of information as to how they can help work together with the teacher, with the team collaboratively to make the school year successful. And part of that information is, of course, attendance. And that, again, is done way before the first day of kindergarten. Again, it's to welcome the families, help them feel a connection with school already before their child even steps foot in the door. Some of the other things that we do is we definitely meet with families individually, and we specifically go through the board policy because many of our parents don't necessarily even know how to access the board policy per se. So we help them through that, and we kind of navigate through the language as to what that means and why it's in the board policy and how it impacts them as a family. And with that, we couple it with the data as far as how critical it is to have our young students in school because of those foundational pieces with the reading, the writing, and the math. As the school progresses and we gather student academic data and parents are starting to have difficulties getting their children to school, then we are sharing that data. We're very transparent about it, and we show them trajectories as far as how their attendance will continue to affect their specific learning. Visuals is very helpful to many of our families, and so we really focus on that kinder readiness piece and how they can support us in those areas before they even get too far into their educational career.
Thank you so much, Anel. And now we're going to go up another level, and I'm going to ask Ben Barlow to join us. So Ben, you know, how from a district, and let's bring up Ben's slide too, do you address this and support this so that, you know, you don't have to have every single school principal, school community creating things on their own?
Thanks, Hetty, for the question. It's great to be with you. And if I could just give a quick shout out to my colleagues from Albuquerque Public Schools. And I see we have some visitors here today from my home state of Mississippi, where I spent 22 years as a teacher and elementary principal. So good to be here with you today. When we think about, helping families with young children to see and experience the benefits of, attendance in the early grades, I want to talk about two levels. One is the district level for all schools, and then things we do out of our unit of 5 or 6 attendance coordinators and 7 attendance social workers in target schools. So at the district level, we're really focusing on capacity building efforts with all APS schools. One thing we do is we offer transformational coaching for school teams around working with specific role groups in the hopes that those folks can take that work and extend it to families, build families' capacities to understand why attendance is critical, especially in the early years, so that we build a real culture of attendance in our school and a understanding of the critical nature of attendance with our families. In terms of general awareness efforts, we do offer video content as well through a family-facing video set called Families Connected. We have community-level awareness campaigns through various streams and also through our social media. At the unit level, which is our team, we're really working to build capacity with school team members in order to work with families so that they see the benefits of early attendance. We have several initiatives that we're working with. We have worked with our pre-K program and teachers to expand their understanding and build their toolkits around attendance in the early grades. We also offer a kindergarten attendance initiative that meets several times during the year. Kindergarten is a challenging data set across the nation. Here in Albuquerque, it is our #1 most chronically absent grade. And in that initiative, we focus on helping teachers not only to build their knowledge, but to build their practice and to be ready to show evidence that we're doing the things in our classrooms that help families to understand the benefits of early attendance. In addition, we work with Albuquerque Public Schools McKinney-Vento program to make sure that we're addressing that specific subgroup of students who may be experiencing some level of being unhomed. We also offer work with our folks in foster care and in our Indian education department. I want to point out that in terms of our dual capacity building framework orientation at the district level, we do offer and we help co-sponsor a biannual attendance conference that is a statewide conference that APS helps co-sponsor. One of our units in our greater department in here in APS offers family engagement training for school teams around that is sort of couched in the work of Dr. Karen Mapp and Joyce Epstein and others. And we're really focusing on being able to look at all the issues and get that support to families early by building school teams' capacity to do the work and to build their capacity to advocate in their schools. That what we really believe and what I hear on this webinar, which is that school attendance is everybody's job. And when we take it that way and look at it that way, we open lots of doorways to being able to identify root causes. Lastly, we advocate with school teams to use structured methods of connecting with families that are already in existence to talk about attendance. And that could include parent-teacher conferencing. We all know that's probably a misnomer. It's way more than parents raising children these days. That also includes conferences for school teams, and then a focus on connecting learning at school and at home.
Thank you so much, Ben. And we do see questions. We're going to come, by the way, at the end to come back to questions, and in between, folks may be answering. But why don't we pull back up the slides, and I'm going to ask Lysandra again from Children's Aid, or is it Sandra, I think actually, to join us and tell us about what you all are doing to get, there's helping know why it shows up, and then there's actually helping families get into that routine.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I definitely want to point out, Lysandra's video with a parent, the mom said in Spanish, there's a habit and a routine. So once they understand the routine, it becomes a habit. So that is definitely, can you put on the next slide? That is something we definitely are embracing in our school community, understanding the nature of what a routine is in a school. One of the things we do is work with our parents and share them what the routine is in school, right? So the students have nap time, they have lunch, and then we inquire what the routine is at home. So we try to help them make that connection to how important it is a routine at school and how important it is a routine at home. So that is definitely, that's a work of the youth advocates when they sit down and speak with the parents about attendance. The other thing is also sharing the loss of instructional time when the student is out. So one of the things we tend to do is let them know it's 7 hours that the student spends their time in school. Multiply that by 3 if they're absent, that's 20 hours of time that they have lost, they have not been in school. So just making those connections to the adult life, it is very important for our families, because sometimes they tend to, it's like, it's just school, nothing is happening. But if we go over their schedule, we're like, well, they lost an ELA instruction, they lost some phonics. How are we going to be able to replace that? The other thing is also like helping the parents create a routine and how beneficial it is. So we have worked with some families in creating their schedule, laminating. I remember we're a principal, we laminated the schedules, we send it out to the home so they can be able to put it on top of the refrigerator as a reminder what time they got to go to bed, what time they got to brush their teeth, and then what time they got to home. So we got to make that connection, help them. There is a routine at school and there is a routine at home. I know my colleague Lysandra has more on this. Take it away, Lysandra.
Thank you, Sandra. Next slide, please. So in the early childhood division at Children's Aid, we created these attendance report cards that get shared alongside our academic report cards, and they're discussed during parent-teacher conferences. Next slide, please. In addition, we monitor attendance and chronic absenteeism on a monthly basis. We have policies and procedures that all staff are trained on multiple times throughout the year on how to accurately track and monitor attendance, as well as how to respectfully check in with the families and provide support to those that are struggling with regular attendance. We encourage and support the families to create a plan, build a routine to ensure students make it to school ready to learn and engage regularly. Thanks.
Lysandra and Sandra, before we get off, there's a question about tardiness. As part of your routine work, do you do anything to address tardiness? And Anel, I'm going to also ask you that question when I have you talk about the routine too.
Yes, I do. We do at the community school. One of the ways we do is Monday Mania. We know data has indicated to us that Monday is always a very hard day for kids to get up and come to school. So at our school community, we have a Monday Mania. So all kids that arrive on time get a raffle ticket, and it will be entered in a jar for them to be able to pick up as a winner at the end of the day.
All right. So with that, I'm going to shift it over. Let's stop the slides for a second. And then what do you do to help families in your school get into that routine of attendance? And if you could mention what you do around tardies at the same time, that'd be great.
Yes, absolutely. Everything that Sandra and Lysandra shared earlier are similar strategies we have used in our district as well, in particular in our building. One of the things that we really do focus on is the chronically absenteeism. We look at it weekly. So I have an attendance team that meets weekly to monitor the progress the students have made or not made as far as attendance is concerned. And what we do is we make decisions at this meeting based on the data that we're seeing on a weekly basis, whether we need to make a home visit, if we cannot get the parent to talk to us even on the phone or come into the school for whatever reasons. They may have various reasons why they can't. And so we make it a point that there's not a problem. We would be more than happy to come to your home to make it more convenient for you, but we're always trying to give the message that we're trying to work together as a team and collaborate together. Once we are at that point where we have the parent either on the phone or in a meeting face-to-face in the office or in their home, we take a collaborative problem-solving approach, whereas we have very specific guidelines, like we have 3 specific steps we take. One of them is we really listen to their concern. We don't even share our data at this point. We just like, something about getting the student to school is very hard. And that's where we tackle some of the tardiness too, because it might be not just absences, but tardy as well. And then once we get the parents or the caregiver to share, it's like, you know what, it's really hard because I work overnights and I can't get up in the morning. So then my child can't get up. We listen to what their true concern is or what the barriers are that's causing them to not bring or have their child attend school. It might be health related. It might be, work related. It might be a social, emotional, mental need. Whatever it is, we listen with intent. And then that's when we bring in our data and we say, well, this is our school concern and this is why, and this is how it's impacting your child. So then when we have those 2 concerns on the table, then we look at a solution that will help solve both of those solutions. And we problem solve and we come up with various solutions, and we say, like, let's try this one first, and if it doesn't work, we're going to come back to the table and we're going to try something else. And sometimes it's buying certain resources that parents may need to help them with those routines that we've helped them build prior. So that approach is used for both absences and tardy. And so, yeah, those are very specific areas that then lead us into creating these goals that we want to, so we can reach these goals on attendance with the students that we have targeted based on our data. So yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. And Ben, again, that question, how do you take this from a district perspective, which is so critical to scaling this kind of work out?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I just want to return to a couple of things I highlighted earlier. At the district level, APS is a gigantic district, around 70,000 children, 14,000 employees, something like that. Again, we offer transformational coaching. We feel like this is really the root of our work. And by transformational coaching, we mean coaching at the individual team or coaching a school leader, an attendance team or school leader or individual associated with that team around, not only the advocacy work that it takes to establish a strong culture of school attendance, but also around the sort of work and who, what, when, where, why kind of attitude you have to have around attacking attendance work at all tiers. And we coach teams around that. We nudge them and try to provide them support around best practices and strategies that really work, many of which come from attendance works. We also offer technical assistance. We know that teams come to us and engage us at all levels. Some teams are just forming and perhaps there's been a leadership change or some staff changes out of school, and that team may need more technical assistance or more need us to reach them in a different way than perhaps a highly functioning team in a school that's kept relatively the same amount of members of the same folks doing the work and who have established processes and systems that get to that work and that's effective. And again, really we're digging into root cause and knowing that root causes vary according to the family situation and the child, and it's up to us to identify that so that we can get around barriers to attendance. Here at APS, we also have established here in the recent few months some goals and guardrails and a strategic plan for achieving those for our district in an effort to not only increase and strengthen student outcomes, but also to around academics, but also around the sorts of skills, habits, and mindsets that it takes to be successful. And we're really excited about that. And one of those interim guardrails is around attendance. And so that really helps our schools to focus their work. And we're working with them to help them build their plans around that work. And again, at the unit level, just wanted to highlight some initiatives that we have going on. You can see that Kinder is one of those. That's a high chronic absenteeism population. We find that our Native American students are also among the highest chronically absent students. And we want to start the work early. So we've again engaged our pre-K program and engaged them in training around family engagement and attendance and the other programs that you see listed there. I think I want to just highlight once more the idea that we are really trying to establish or work from a dual capacity building orientation. So we believe that our transformational coaching and our technical assistance, whether it's one of our attendance coordinators working with one of their 20 or 30 assigned schools, or whether it's one of our attendance social workers who are assigned to 2 target schools, a middle and a high school each, no matter where you're working in this unit with schools, we really feel like building school teams' capacity to do the work is essential, and then nudging them forward to do the work with families in partnership with families so that we can realize stronger student outcomes across schools and across the district.
And Ben, what I'm taking, because I saw some questions, I know we're targeting our youngest learners, but there's clearly a couple people in middle and high school on this webinar. It sounds like some of these district level strategies, transformational coaching, technical assistance, root causes, guardrails, actually cut K-12. And then what I'm really appreciating about what you're saying here is you're using your data to see which populations are most affected, so that then you can think about how to even add more, go deeper, figure out how to tailor solutions to those groups. And I would just say to those of you who are thinking about middle and high school, just take those same principles and apply them at older ages as well. So I want to shift now to our next question, and it's about the top attendance barriers that folks see. And I'm going to go to the Children's Aid team again and ask Monica to join us. Monica, can you tell us a little about the top attendance barriers for the families that you serve and how you're addressing them?
Of course. Good afternoon, everyone. So one of the barriers our families face is access to healthcare. At Children's Aid, we ensure each child has health insurance during enrollment. For families who may not have health insurance, we connect them with our clinics and support them in the process to obtaining insurance. We're lucky enough to have Children's Aid clinics, so we encourage our families to become patients there, or we provide them with a list of medical providers within their communities and inform them of our partnerships with NYU, Columbia, just to mention a few. We do a lot of collaboration with the family. We assist families in understanding their rights and the program's health requirements for their children. I also want to highlight that our family advocates are a major part to these strategies, as they are essential, and they're probably the first person they come in contact with enrolling with us and in constant communication. They receive trainings and support to review medical forms with families and highlight any health concerns that, sometimes is possible the medical provider may not discuss with our families in making appointments and follow-ups when needed. So this is very important, making sure that they have healthcare and their access and the quality of healthcare that they have. The other barrier I want to highlight is managing illnesses, between the common cold, flu, COVID, asthma, and allergies, and any other illnesses children may face during their school experience. It's really hard for a parent to know, when should I keep my child at home and for how long? So we make our health manual, which lists our policies and procedures, available to all staff, from teacher, cooks, custodians, to even our community partnerships and any consultant that walks through our doors. They know our health policies, but also we create a shorter version for our families. And in that smaller version, there is a chart where it says, if your child has fever, you should keep your child for this amount of time, or, if your child has lice, these are the things that you should, do or we recommend, but also following your medical provider's instructions. As illnesses start to appear in our program, we provide guidance of when a child should stay at home, in addition to resources that educate our families on the signs and symptoms, what to look for, how to prevent, how to manage during, but also what are your next steps and what is the responsibility of you at home and us, because like I said, we do a lot of collaboration with the family. So it's a lot of communication, a lot of, just resources that are available for everyone.
Monica, could you just say a word about whether school nurses are part of your effort, and if so, how?
Yeah, so we're lucky to have clinics, at least 1 or 2 clinics where our sites are at, and we are in partnership with our clinics too at Children's Aid. And we also have a health consultant as well, and she comes to the sites and visits our families, children, and staff.
Great. So I'm now going to shift over to Anel and ask her what is happening in her school. What do you see as some of the top barriers? Maybe health might be one of them, but I know there are more than just those barriers. And how are you guys addressing them?
Correct. One of the things we see, especially with our younger, is a student-teacher relationship. For some reason, either it's not there, it hasn't been established yet. So one of the things we do is help through our counselor and social worker. We encourage the family to continue to bring the child, and we help bridge that relationship gap that may exist. Again, it's always about trying to, I've heard the root cause and the concern the child or the adult may have. More often than not, through those conversations with the student and the parent, we end up finding out that it's more of a detachment concern that the child is having, having to transition from 2.5 to 3 hours of preschool to 7 hours of school, having to leave family, whoever it may be that they're attached to, is something that we come across often. So it starts off as like, I don't want to be there, I don't have this relationship with this adult, but it turns out to I really don't want to leave my mom. And
I suspect, and now sometimes we also have moms who don't really want to leave their kids too.
Yes, absolutely. It works both ways. And so they get they wonder why, because parents often think, well, no, my child has never had an issue being away from me, but really not being away from me for 7 hours, which is such an abstract world for our young ones anyway. And some of the other things are, chronic stressors on top of health that was already shared, but homelessness, common chronic stressors that you may hear that our kids are totally impacted by. In Marshalltown, Iowa, some of our chronic stressors or traumatic, not necessarily chronic, is some of the traumatic or pieces that our children have gone through is several very severe weather-related incidents that we've had recently in the last 4 years. Also, we're noticing there's still, and we know that research shows that trauma can show up anywhere between right away or years later. So that is also something that we are still dealing with, because we've gone through an F3 tornado, we've gone through a derecho, and so the way we tackle some of the things, again, is through that attendance team that we have established, that we meet weekly, and then we problem solve like everyone else. And I'm sure everyone out there in the world, that you problem solve, you try to find out what's going on, how we can help, and we try to address each individual child as their needs are coming up. So yeah, it's really working with the families, like all the other panelists have shared tremendously. That's the biggest work, is having that relationship, that positive relationship with those families. I think one of the things that has helped us in our particular school in Marshalltown, one of the elementaries here in Marshalltown, is that the language, because sometimes it's a language barrier, and so in our school, we have a bilingual program. So many of our staff, myself included, we are bilingual, and we speak the language our parents can understand more than English. And so we have that connection already with them. So we try to help them bridge that gap with any other agency that may be of some services, to be able to tackle some of these concerns that come up, to help their child be at school more often. So we try to connect them with health providers, mental health providers if needed. And so we're often that bridge as well. And we're often asked to help interpret or translate either conversations or materials, so parents can have that connection and be able to support our students to get here on time and daily.
Thank you so much, Anel. That's such a rich array of things that you're doing. Ben, back to you again. What can a district do?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm going to keep the majority of my comments related to health, and then I will bring up one other thing we've noticed. We are seeing in terms of health related, and SEL. We're seeing a lot of chronic health issues that are causing attendance barriers to attendance, and then also a number of students at all levels, as the principal said, as Children's Aid mentioned, experiencing behavioral and mental health issues that need to be addressed so that they can get past that barrier to school and get on back to school. I will say that our district has been doing this work long before my time here, and even before the state of New Mexico enacted an attendance law that came out around 2019. Both our district policy and our attendance law drive us at the district level, at the school level, at the team level to implement an effective tiered approach to attendance. And of course, that identifies the thresholds that help us to get early identification going with students, and then certainly work with families to get to those root causes and address those. We are absolutely blessed to be able to have school nurses and health assistants in our schools, especially since COVID. These folks are invaluable in helping break down barriers to attendance for students. We know that if the root cause, what we're finding is that if the root cause is medical, we can create a success plan for attendance that through the health and wellness teams here in our school district that will help those students and those families get past those barriers, or at least chip away at them. In addition to that, school nurses and health assistants are incredible advocates with other what we call tier 1 support teams, or teams that might be able to help the attendance effort, whether that be your PBIS team or health and wellness is a tier 1 support team as well, to build what we call here and what our state law calls student attendance success plans. I want to highlight a couple of things we do here in our greater division within APS to help identify and work with those families and students. We do have a Medicaid enrollment unit that it's an entire initiative around enrolling eligible families into Medicaid to get their health needs met. We heard from the Children's Aid and from Principal Garza that this is an issue, not just here in Albuquerque, but in Iowa and elsewhere in New York. That's a big deal. We have Medicaid coordinators who offer booths, pop-up booths at health fairs around those schools in APS, and also concerning behavioral and mental health needs. We have community behavioral health programs that come up through APS. We also have several folks in different, both here in our department and in our division and in other departments and division, that work collaboratively to promote social emotional learning and those sorts of, as I said before, the habits and skills and mindsets that are crucial to getting through school and having success in school. I wanted to also mention our recently arrived English learner program. We have a unit in APS that is comprised of folks from several different countries, and their work is to be sort of a first point of contact with our families and students who are coming as recently arrived English learners. Albuquerque is a welcoming environment for these families, be them from Afghanistan or the Ukraine or wherever they're coming from. We want to make sure these families are engaged and that they have access to the supports they need to access school, American school, which can be quite different from what they came from. It's a real all hands on deck approach here at APS. We know that there's a variety of barriers to attendance, and we want to make sure that we get at it in every way possible with every group possible.
Thank you so much, Ben. I want to actually now shift, and you were already moving that way in terms of talking about the partnerships that we need to have in place. So if we can go up to the slide deck again, next slide. And I want to actually ask Sandra Romero to join us, because clearly it is not just up to schools to get families back to school regularly every day and address those attendance barriers. We really needed other folks outside of schools. Can you talk more about, as a community school, what is it that you do to help make sure that other partners are aligned or arrayed or set up so that they can work well with schools to support that culture of attendance and address those barriers.
Yes, of course. Can we move on to the next slide? So one thing I definitely like to share is that sometimes we forget that our partners are inside the school. So one is we have to be able to ask our partners inside the school. When I say partners, we have the nurses, we have the custodians, we have the cafeteria, we have our teachers, we have our parents. So asking for support in our own school, but building the knowledge of attendance, right? One thing is a big difference us asking, but we know what we're asking for, but they don't know what they're going to come in and support it with us. So school nurses, school cafeteria, custodians, security agents, school staff, parent coordinators, and social workers, those are our go-to. But also another thing is nearby local stores. So one of the things we have done in the past, and we have shared information, is that we've gone to local bodegas or partners that we purchased items for, and we ask them like, hey, if anybody stops, can you just share attendance information? We give a one pager for them to be able. Sometimes they're looking at us like, what are you talking about? But the more we step in and we do that spiel and have those conversations, we're always a strong believer that they're going to be able to get it. The other thing is also the district point person. So you have to be able to know who's your attendance coordinator in the district, and then you and her meet together to be able to discuss like what is your attendance strategies and what is it that she can be able to help you with the school as well. Our attendance teacher. So we have an attendance teacher that attends our weekly meetings. She's my go-to person. I'm always asking her, like, is there any updates? Is there something new? Have you heard? Is there something that we can bring into our school? Send letters to school district with school information, like, hey, this is what we're doing. We're doing parent workshops. We're doing parents attendance cafe. Please help us spread the word, for the teacher, to the families or students. The other thing is also attendance matter logos. You have a flyer here in front of you. We always put that in our flyers because it is spread out into our marketing. And then, our hashtag, Be Here Every Day, which is part of our marketing. A school community, I am a co-located school. I have 3 schools in the building, but we're all, speaking with the leaders of the building, letting them know like this is, our focus is in attendance, because like you said, we can do all these strategies, but if the student is not in the school, our strategies are not going to be working out.
Thank you, Sandra. And I appreciate the point also about the district point person, because sometimes if you don't have some way of thinking across the district, sort of the loudest schools get the most resources, and the loudest schools aren't always the schools that need the most support. So having sort of thinking about this in a more regional or a district way, as well as at the local school level, seems so crucial. And now I want to go up another level, and I want to ask Brandis Stockman to please join us, because Brandis, cities are crucial partners potentially in this, and I would think that it matters a lot. This issue should be something that cities and mayors care a lot about. So Brandis, tell us a lot more about why should cities care, and what are some of the resources that the National League of Cities has in place to help to get cities partnering even more effectively with schools and districts to address these issues.
Great. Thank you so much, Hetty. I'm really excited to be here today representing the National League of Cities. I think, when we're talking about addressing chronic absenteeism, and when you're thinking about who to bring to the table to really work on solutions, the first people that come to mind are district staff, principals, teachers, social workers, maybe community-based organizations, but not necessarily cities. And so I'm here to tell you why cities actually really are invested in addressing chronic absenteeism, because it makes a really big difference in their community as a whole. Next slide, please. So cities and mayors are extremely invested in school engagements and attendance for all sorts of reasons. I'm going to talk about just a few right now. One of the big things that mayors are talking about is workforce development and kind of what that looks like within their cities. We know that when students are not attending school regularly, that can impact high school graduation rates, which can also impact post-secondary degree attainment and can in turn affect the workforce. And so mayors are currently having some issues filling their municipal jobs, but also when they're looking to attract new businesses into their cities, they're having some trouble providing the workforce to be able to support those businesses. And so really addressing these attendance issues is something that can help the city be more prosperous in the long term.
Brandis, it strikes me that that's a two-gen, both the future workforce and the current workforce, because if kids aren't showing up to school regularly, their parents are a little stressed out and may not be as productive as they might be on the job.
Absolutely. It's a complete ripple effect for sure. The second one is schools, having better schools in the community. And there's a lot of families that when they're looking at moving into a particular city, one of the first things they look at is the school. And, they'll ask, what kind of an educational experience is my child going to get in this school? Are these schools that have high achievement rates or high attendance rates? Is it a positive environment? Is it going to be worth it for me to move into this city versus another city because of the schools that my students are going to be able to attend? Also, community safety. So we know that when students are engaged during the school day, they're more likely to be engaged in positive learning environments outside of the school day. And I think a great example of this is after school programs. So especially school-based programs, because when students are enrolled in those programs, a lot of the time the requirement is that they're there during the school day in order to stay after school. So we also know that youth crime, and not just perpetration, but also victimization, is highest between the hours of 3 and 6 p.m. And so if those students are actively engaged in after-school programs, then they are more likely to be contributing to the safety of the community. And I want to take this opportunity to address one of the questions that was in the Q&A just very briefly, but this can be a really good strategy to address those high school and middle school age youth that are having trouble attending during the school day. Incorporating sports and theater and science clubs into the after-school program can really motivate those students to come to school in order to have the opportunity to participate in those programs. Next slide, please. So what does this look like in action? Like, how can cities actually support the work that you're doing? Mayor's offices in particular are really great at bringing attention to the issue. They have easy access to the media and can issue press releases. They can issue proclamations. We have a number of cities this year that issued attendance awareness proclamations, including the mayor of Philadelphia, which is very exciting. They're also able to assist with your attendance awareness campaign strategies. So whether that's doing home visits or, whatever that looks like, they're able to assist with that. And they have the platform to publicly recognize students for improved attendance, if that is, again, part of your strategy. Cities are also great at convening a broad set of partners. And so they have access to partners such as local businesses that districts and community-based organizations might not be able to access on their own. Cities can provide staff to act as mentors during the school day. They can be great partners in community events. That can be an opportunity for you to go and advertise whatever messages that you're sending about school day attendance at those events. They can also help solve some of the challenges related to basic needs issues. And so they can help with transportation or work with the local health department to increase access to vaccinations. And then, of course, cities do have access to funding. Right now, there's a lot of funding coming from the American Rescue Plan Act that went specifically to cities, but they also have access to longer-term, more stable funding like taxes and other city general funds that could contribute to your campaign. Next slide, please. NLC has worked in partnership with a number of national organizations, such as Attendance Works, to put together a resource page where we have briefs and fact sheets like the one on the left. We have blogs, we have city examples geared towards city leaders that are looking to get engaged in addressing chronic absenteeism and bringing those students back to school more regularly. They are geared towards city leaders, but they're also great for anybody looking for some ideas on how to engage city leaders in the work, or if a case needs to be built to the city leaders, then those are some resources that you can use. I would love for you to check out the resources on the webpage. My information will be in the chat. Also happy to answer any individual questions you have afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brandis. I'm going to ask Ben Barlow to talk a little bit about some of the key partners that have been key for Albuquerque. But as he's doing that, I'm actually going to have us turn off the slide and invite everyone else to start showing their pictures, because then we're going to switch into Q&A. But Ben, there have been particularly important community partners in Albuquerque. Can you say a little bit about who they've been and what their role's been?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'll highlight a couple here and then highlight their work a little bit. One in APS, one particular example of this sort of partnership over the past 7-8 years, I believe, has been the United Way of North Central New Mexico. And that group and their director of collective impact, Terry Wimborne, have supported attendance efforts in APS and statewide in a variety of ways. One way that they do that is they offer monthly webinars that reach both APS school staff and other schools statewide regarding chronic absenteeism strategies and best practices. Here recently, the United Way, in partnership with the New Mexico PTA and with a little lift from our unit, highlighted a local elementary school in a press event where this local elementary school, Chaparral Elementary School, shout out to Chaparral, they're really leveraging family engagement as a method for addressing chronic absenteeism, and it really shows in their numbers. And we were glad to partner and collaborate with the United Way of North Central New Mexico and PTA to do that. In addition to that, and this is probably the biggest thing we do in partnership with the United Way of North Central New Mexico, over the past near decade, we've partnered with them and with the New Mexico Public Education Department more recently to deliver the biannual New Mexico statewide attendance conference. We were fortunate to have Hetty, your colleague, Cecilia Long, as a speaker, and we're excited to have you as a speaker come February in our spring conference. In the conference, we traditionally offer breakout sessions, local, state, and national level main room presenters, team planning time, which is something we hear about from teams over and over again at a conference. We want more time. We need more time to plan. And we also offer sort of a conference that's themed, if you will, in a way that recognizes what schools will be doing at that time of year in their work around attendance with regard to their attendance plan. And, United Way also offers activation of other community partners around the way. And there are others engaged in the work at many levels. For instance, we're collaborating with community partners who work with target populations or at the district and community level. Individual approaches, all are utilized. So one example of that, of a different partner, we've got a partner in the South Valley, which is a semi-rural area of the city of Albuquerque, just south of Albuquerque. And that organization is called ERSEA to the University. And they really give families and kiddos, guidance about reaching university and beyond, and providing guidance around the important transition years like pre-K to K or 3rd to 4th grade, 6th to 7th. Yeah.
So Ben, what I'm hearing is the notion of creating convenings where you can really bring community partners into the convenings to share, to hear about the situation, but also to share the resources, and then targeting people to come to the convenings based on what you also know about what some of those challenges are. I want to actually open up to the group. There are a couple of questions about transportation, because we know that one of the barriers that kids can face is transportation, or even unsafe paths, but also unreliable transportation. Brandis, have you seen any great examples? And then I'm going to turn to Children's Aid or Anel to see creative solutions around transportation when that's a barrier in general, or actually for kids with McKinney-Vento.
Yeah, I was furiously typing answers to this question. Glad it was a paragraph, so glad to be able to talk instead. So we've seen a bunch of different approaches. One of them, mayors have issued bus passes for all youth in the city, which has been a really good option for families to be able to access public transportation. They have also worked with schools to better map out the bus routes and the schedules to line up with those school day schedules. And on our student re-engagement page on the NLC website, there's an example of one city who activated their fire department to meet students at their bus stop to be able to attract interest. Kids always love the fire people and the fire trucks and all of that stuff. And so it got a lot of interest from the youth, and their attendance rates went up because of it. So those are just a few examples.
On our side of community schools, one of the things we tend to do is that we do a lot of case management. So when there's a situation with bus transportation, especially our families who are in temporary housing, we go in, we advocate, we go to the shelter, we speak to the supervisor. But the main thing we do is try to find that point person who is coordinating the bus routes and also advocating, right? So we have a student that was living in the Bronx, and then because of temporary housing, they had to move to Queens. What we try to do is try to avoid that with the advocacy piece and bring it to for them to stay there or stay somewhere nearby the area. We also have walking school bus. This is for families. For example, we have families that are expecting or suddenly have a health concern. We have a staff that goes and pick up the kids at the nearby location, like a bus, waits for a corner, and then all the kids are dropped, and then that staff brings them back to our school.
Has anyone done anything particularly for kids with McKinney-Vento? And I will say that one of the things we've seen is a growth in the number of apps that are created around these transportation issues. Some of them are like a rideshare app, and I've seen this used for McKinney-Vento where because the drivers are then have an extra layer of evaluation to make sure that it's safe, because you're going to put your kid in a car with someone. It's like an Uber or a Lyft app, but it's actually more to target it. I've also seen interesting ride sharing apps for parents starting to evolve. So I think this is an interesting thing where there is a kind of an app field and I've also seen places where they've tried to do more of a community diagnostic across the after school, the churches, the charter schools, and maybe even the district to see about whether or not, like, maybe there's an extra van that you need that can be hired across different people, but it's looking at multiple modes and then trying to do a mapping out across the different community agencies and looking at gaps and supports. So anyone else want to add to the transportation? And then Monica?
So for our early childhood division, we do have something called New York Times Neediest. So it's a case by case. If we feel that the family is going through a financial hardship, we do try to get that type of resources for the family as well.
All right. And then there's a question. This is from Stan Baker, and it's now we're getting kind of more on the parent messaging. But how can we bridge the gap between a COVID-induced sort of life's too short and the school's long-term concerns about the impacts of absenteeism? How do we help with showing a more shorter-term benefit that kind of helps families understand the critical importance? Ben.
Thanks for letting me speak. I'm going to speak with my administrator hat on. One thing I found as a school administrator is that if families don't know what might result from not being at school and missing outstanding teaching and learning, then they don't know what they don't know. And one thing I would do is make sure as a principal that if there were interventions meetings going on, whether, we're talking about attendance interventions here, that I was in the room and that we were talking at a family's level, wherever that level was, and approaching them with candor and love and trust and telling them, these are the things that result when you're missing 2 days. If you're in kindergarten or first grade, you miss 2 days, you could likely drop a reading level. And that's work that has to be made up that really needs to be with the teacher and is very difficult to do on your own. In terms of the school, I know that what the school's responsibility is in that, whether a family is totally on board with coming back to school, reintegrating with attendance or not, they need to know that we're going to support them with reintegration support, not just academically and not just a packet of work. It's got to be something they can do, and that it's a balanced amount of work, and that we're going to support them with social and emotional things. And as I said before, as our district is advocating for the skills and the habits and the mindsets that allow us to succeed in a class or school. And our teachers need to be modeling those things and those expectations, and administrators need to be involved heavily.
Ben, I think this connects to a question that was asked when you were speaking earlier about what does family engagement training look like that's about attendance? How is, when you're looking at family engagement, but the focus is on attendance, how is that different from what we might have seen in the past, but what are you doing in that kind of training?
Well, I could tell you what kind of training our what are the units that our department offers, and then I can kind of speak a little bit quickly about the kinds of things we coach teams around. So we do offer a family engagement training to school teams, and we often see schools combine their family engagement and their attendance teams into one team because they're inexorably linked. I mean, attendance is in everything. And what we really focus on is partnership with the family, real partnership, and making them feel valued no matter what they're coming in with. We need them in order to have success with kids, and they have valuable information, and we have to think of them as cherished assets. And there's no other way around it, in my view. In terms of the district and the coaching that we provide schools around family engagement, we often find that for what it's worth, that staff may have reservations around engaging some families who may be coming from a different space than they are. And we find it very helpful and useful to work with staff around having difficult conversations with families that can have a productive end. We also work with staff to identify things that they're willing to do at their school and get buy-in for. For instance, we've seen a number of schools start entertaining the idea of a home visit protocol. And you really do need a protocol. You can't just force home visits on school staff. There needs to be a protocol. It needs to be something we all follow and that we can agree upon to do so that it's effective. I know that in the schools I ran and in the schools I see here at APS that are doing those things, that can be profoundly effective with families who are otherwise hard to reach or who may be in a state of mobility.
Thank you. And now, or the Children's Aid team, is there anything else you might want to add to what does family engagement look like differently? And I realize that one of the things that I see in our work is that with attendance, we've been sort of trained for 150 years. It's about telling the families that you need to comply. But that actually doesn't work to get kids to show up. So part of our problem is we're not starting with a blank slate. We're actually having to help people unlearn problematic behaviors of blaming, of focusing on compliance, as opposed to treating, as you said, Ben, as cherished assets. And one person wrote in the chat about how we send these nasty truancy notifications, which is almost the epitome of how we start with blame as opposed to blame and shame, which actually doesn't help. Have any of you seen something particularly work to change the mindset of staff so they start with partnership engagement? Anyone in the children's, and Sarah Jonas, who's with the Children's Aid, who's here. Sarah, if you want to weigh in here too, please do. We are so appreciative you've joined as well.
I think for the most part in the morning is consistency, saying hi with a smile, building that trust with the family, but also it's like, hey, I noticed such and such is going on. How can I help you? Where do you want me to meet you? Instead of saying, oh my God, you're late. What's going on? It's like, tell me what's going on, asking questions. And it definitely consistency in building that trust, I think, has helped a lot.
Hetty, I would just add, Lysandra, I would just say quickly, I think also I've seen our sites do a really good job of letting families know that they miss their kids. So it's also about we really missed having your child here today. Your child adds so much to our classroom or to our community, or they're such a great artist, or they're so good in, math class or something like that. So it really does personalize it that way. And it values the child, which of course is something that we and the family have in common, is loving that child. And I think that builds trust and relationship with the family as well. Lysandra?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add, so with our division, we have the family advocates. They are the ones that usually connect with the families. So, part of that training on those policies and procedures on how to engage the family, how to approach the family. As my colleague mentioned, it's not about hey, you didn't show up today, you did something wrong. It's really about the approach. The kid is out, you make that call, hey, we noticed that little Billy was out. We just wanted to check in, right? We have a responsibility to ensure that the child is, one, safe and okay, and to inquire what is the reason that they were out, so that we as a program are able to, one, document that, and at a later time be able to assess the data. Like, what are the trends? Like, is it a systemic issue where kids aren't showing up? Is it an individual student whose family is struggling to bring the child regularly, and troubleshooting from there? And really, it's really about the approach. How do you approach the family? And ideally, it's going to be with compassion in a non-judgmental way.
And Lysandra, while we're at you and looking at data for a second, there was a question earlier on about preschool data. Can you say a little bit more about preschool data? What do you see, and what are you monitoring in that, and how are you using that preschool data to inform what needs to happen?
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, a lot of the information that like I personally have utilized to inform, the team and the families comes from Attendance Works. A lot of that data didn't really speak on preschool. I know that we're moving in that direction. So for me, having the privilege of working with families with children as young as 0 up to 5 and those expectant parents, we serve a lot of children, we serve a lot of family, we track a lot of data, and it helps us decide where to like put plans into place. We saw that when COVID happened, chronic absenteeism skyrocketed, right? If the kid had the sniffles, keep them home. Then we moved another program year in, and families were still skeptical about showing up. So it was about informing folks, when to keep the child home, when can the child come in, understanding the importance of showing up, right? It's just really about informing folks so that they understand. I'm a strong believer that,
And I just want to make sure that folks know, so Lysandra, you have access to preschool data. Folks, if you have a Head Start program, for example, most Head Start programs actually have chronic absence data reports built into them. So all the main vendors, this was something that Attendance works with a lot of partners to advocate for. So My Head Start, Child Plus, all of the different main vendors of Head Start programs. And you can actually a lot of school districts have preschool data programs in it that they've started to calculate chronic absence. So I think the thing is that if you're wondering about it, you should be also asking your own communities. I also am wondering too, if folks have used social media in any ways, and where does social media help, and where is it made? Because a lot of what you talked about in those family engagement was very personalized, in person or even telephone conversations. What's the role of social media in all of this? And if you want to speak, raise your hand or something so I know you want to talk. Go ahead, Sandra. And then Lysandra.
It's very important. Social media is being used by everyone here in this whole wide world, right? The hashtag, it's very important that your school has a hashtag, right? So in our school, we have the Be Here every day. If you were to walk in our school community and you ask a kid, be here, they would respond every day. Even parents as well. So we market a lot of it in our school website and our Instagram page. Because that's where parents are going to, right? If they want to know like something is happening at the school, they will go immediately into our website or Instagram page to see like what's going on, what's happening today. But the other good thing is also if they miss something, they know where to find the information for the next time, right? Or sometimes parents like look and say, how come this parent got this? And we're like, well, you missed the attendance cafe. Let's try next month. So that is definitely like our go-to to share information, what's happening in the school community so parents can be aware.
Yep. Similar to what Sandra mentioned. So we have our Instagram page. We have different programs that we get to connect directly with the families. I have recently taken this course, and it said one of the stats were that I think it's like 85% of folks get their information from like a handheld device, your cell phone, right? All of that information. So social media is an easy way to push out your message, right? As opposed to like a paper copy or like having something printed in a newspaper. Like now really social media is like the go-to. You have Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, so many different options, and so many people are in there. Like you could really get your messages across to a larger audience. So we definitely utilize social media to push the message on the importance of attendance, early childhood education, and all of that great stuff.
And I also see people putting in the chat some of the different things that other techniques, whether Class Dojo, Remind, there's a whole set of platforms. Ben, do you want to answer this? And I also want to remind folks that if you can take the poll before you leave, please do that. And Ben, social media.
Yeah, briefly, we have a fairly active Twitter game, X, if you will, and we try to promote not just attendance works, but our own things. In addition to that, we've been experimenting with Linktree to house our various links, especially when we're delivering a big statewide conference with 500-600 folks virtually and live and in person. We find that Linktree is real helpful to house both the streaming link, our website link, our Twitter link, and any other toolkits or resources that we want to display at that time. And it's easy to interact with. Linktree.
All right. With this, I am going to turn things back to Becky Miles-Polka. Such a pleasure to join you all today. And Becky, take it away.
Well, thank you, Hetty. And this has been an incredible conversation and so many questions in Q&A. A number of you asked about specific resources that were mentioned. So we will do our best to get those resources if possible from our presenters today. You will all get the copy of the recording, a copy of the slides. We will get a link to from Lysandra for the children's video. The caregiver one is not available via a link, but the children's one is. So we'll get all that stuff. It'll be all batched together for you, and you will get it at the end of this week. So not to worry. I just want to thank each of our panelists today. Ben from Albuquerque, and Nell from Marshalltown, one of my Iowa colleagues, and the folks from Children's Aid, Monica, Lysandra, and Sandra. It's just been extraordinary to hear about what you are all doing to support families. And Brandis from NLC, we have a mayoral election and city council election coming up here in my community. I'm sending stuff out to them, to these candidates. Sarah, thank you for popping on with us as well. And last but not least, to Hetty, to our dear Hetty, for pulling together this panel, for extending the invitations. What an incredible group of people. And thank you so much to you, Hetty, and to your entire team at Attendance Works for everything you do to keep kids learning. So thanks all. And we are actually ending a little bit early. So we will hopefully see you on one of our upcoming webinars. I posted links for registration. The first two, there is a separate registration link, and then we do have a conversation coming up on early grade retention, controversial topic on November 7th. So a new link to that, and that will all come out in the resources that you get as well. So to everyone who joined us today, correct? Yes, yeah, recording will come. Yep, recording slides, everything will come out to you. And to everybody who joined us today, thank you. Come back again. We loved having you here.